Thank you everybody for joining. Let me welcome Mr. Haribhakti. Uh, he doesn't need any introduction actually. He is a global citizen and has a very impressive track record. He's an industry captain, a pioneer in so many professional topics, aspects, a serial innovator, entrepreneur, author, board chairman, is an independent director on so many companies, educationist, and of course a chartered accountant. A man who has worn many hats in the corporate world and raised standards of various organizations so high that people consider him as a serial innovator, pioneer, teacher, speaker, author, analyst, entrepreneur, and the list goes on. By qualification, he is a chartered accountant, cost accountant, certified internal auditor, certified financial planner, fraud examiner. Any professional who dreams of becoming a professional, he is a role model for them. I am one amongst them. He is my professional guru. I started my career under him. He is a global thought leader in the area of environment, social, and governance and has helped pioneer impactful concepts like IR, innovating path to net zero. He is also well-known thought leader on the Indian economy, public policies. He takes special interest in technology, in ESG, integrated reporting. He's an evangelist. He's also an author of two books, namely The Digital Professional and Audit Renaissance. Mr. Haribhakti has a passion for learning, love for auditing, and ability to think ahead of his time. He's invited to so many global forums, and we are very fortunate to have him today. He has spared 2 hours of his professional time to address us on the topic of sustainability assurance. He truly believes in a bright and abundant future for all of humanity driven by innovation and large scale digital adoption. I have learned three qualities from him in my stint when I worked under Mr. Haribhakti. One is to be a fearless professional, be non-compromising on ethics and integrity, and third is to be highly responsive. I'll give you some examples of how he shapes behaviors of students and young chartered accountants when I joined him, I think 20-25 years back. On day one of working with him, he made me realize how important audit documentation is and how important taking notes is in life in terms of guiding me right from the first meeting of carrying a writing pad and a pen into the meeting and noting down everything what is of importance to me as an individual and what are my key takeaways. So apart from being a very larger than life figure, he gets into the nitty gritties to teach professionals in such a nice way that they become lifelong lessons. To be a fearless professional, in my personal association with him, I have got lot many examples to share, but one key example that stands out and which I always recollect is his such a positive attitude as a leader to help out and to reach out young professionals in times of need. When I was investigating a fraud and I needed someone senior like him to interrogate one of the suspects, he volunteered immediately to do so, and at 5:30 in the morning he met the suspect at South Bombay in one of the temples to do the interrogation in his own style and crack the case. So it's amazing when you work with such a personality, the life lessons that you get from them in terms of their engaging behavior, their non-compromising ethics, and so many other virtues. I can go on and on. And Mr. Haribhakti's biodata is very difficult to actually introduce him because he is a chairman, he is an independent director, he serves as an advisor on boards, and it's a very illustrious list, including L&T Finance Holdings, L&T Mutual Fund, Future Lifestyle, NSDL E-Governance, ACC, Bajaj Electricals, you name the company, and he has served them or he has been associated on the board, including Times Group, including private equity like Gaja Capital Group. He has also headed and led a lot of management and industry platforms and associations, Bombay Management Association, Institute of Internal Auditors, WRC, Indian Merchant Chambers, and so forth. We welcome Mr. Hari Bhakti very warmly, and I would request you to join me in giving him a very warm round of applause as a speaker, and then would hand over the session to Mr. Hari Bhakti for his speech. Sir, with these words, I would request you to take charge of the session.
Thank you, Josefa. It's always a pleasure to be introduced by you because you bring out so many of our personal interactions, which is a storehouse of memories for me, and it is so nice to recollect all the wonderful time we have spent together. And I'm sure that every one of you on this call is enjoying a phenomenal leadership and an experience of being a great professional that Josefa brings to the table. He is one of the most endearing persons that I have known, and he is the kind of person that makes me feel so happy that the profession is in very good hands and ready for taking the next few leaps that I'm going to describe in my presentation today. What I have planned to do is I will first give you a 3-minute outline on how sustainability assurance needs to be done, or what are the critical things to be done in sustainability assurance. But what is important is to take all of you to your firm in 2040 and show you what might be the environment, and then contextualize what I have said in the 3 minutes to make you feel ready to take on that kind of challenge. So, the 3-minute outline of sustainability assurance takes into consideration 5 major uh, issues that you will need to deal with and contend with. First is you will have to get under the skin of the framework that the organization that you are providing assurance for is using. And there are many frameworks that have evolved in the world. What happened over many years is that people voluntarily took up the task of creating the frameworks, and they organized themselves. So there was a task force for climate disclosures. There was a framework that was put out by the Integrated Reporting Initiative. There was a framework that was put out by accounting uh, bodies from across the world. IOSCO put out some frameworks. So there were multiple frameworks that were actually put out. But the most prevalent framework today is the TCFD framework that combined with the SASB, or the Sustainability Standards Board, no, not the sustainability. Uh, the SASB is a set of foundational principles which are driving how people should report on sustainability. And the GRI is what is used in India to actually do this reporting. So what happened on 1st June of this year in 2021 is that SASB and GRI merged together to create what is now called the Value Reporting Foundation, which has as its co-chairman a very famous judge from South Africa, Mervyn King. So Michael Bloomberg, who was earlier the New York governor, and Mervyn King are now leading this joint, if you like, organization, Value Reporting Foundation, which will set out the manner in which we should report or communicate to various economic interests about our sustainability performance. But to make sure that this reporting happens using standard measures and making sure that these standards are uniformly practiced across the world. The IASB in London has created what they call their little sister called the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board. So this Sustainability Accounting Standards Board will drive the measures which will be used to report on the framework that the Value Reporting Foundation will put together. So this is the broad situation that you have to keep in mind. Now, what do these frameworks and these standards do? They enable you to communicate what you have done to either change dramatically or incrementally the six capitals of integrated reporting. And we will talk about them uh, very briefly now because it's important just to get a sense that it's not just financial capital which makes the world go round. You have what is called the human capital, the environmental or the natural capital, the reputation capital, the innovation capital, the brand capital. So there are six different capitals which actually make the world go round and which, if you look at any balance sheet and you compare the net worth with the market cap, then I'm always left wondering, for example, that if the net worth is X and the market cap is a multiple of that X, then what is that difference? And a lot of that difference was thought to represent the value of the brand, the intangibles that that organization had developed. Now, this integrated thinking or integrated reporting is trying to put some kind of a structured valuation on each of these capitals so that you can then assure the reader of the integrated report, a copy of which of Larsen and Toubro Finance's integrated report I have sent to Josefa, the latest one which we brought out just 3 days ago. So those of you who are interested can obtain it from him or from the website of our company. Torrent is also putting out an integrated report this year. And virtually every company that I sit on the board of this year, I have insisted that they come out with an integrated. Blue Star will come out with an integrated report, which you will see very soon. So almost all the companies you will see have an integrated report. And most of them have got an assurance statement from an external independent firm or body, which assures that whatever has been said comes out of a well thought out set of measures and is representative of the true increment or decrement in the capitals that are being displayed in the report. So then what is your task as a provider of that assurance service? You need to go into the underlying model, the underlying framework, the underlying manner in which data sets have been set up. How are those data sets being captured? What are the systems which enable the capture of that data set? Are those systems robust enough? Are they automated? Do they, at the end of it, provide the assurance that or provide a truthful representation of what has really happened? Now, the most difficult things to measure and report on are issues relating to the S part of the ESG, which is the social responsibility. Because a lot of that goes into issues like safety at the workplace, issues like harmony, diversity. Now, those are very difficult to compute. So there are surrogate measures which are used, and therefore it becomes important to make sure that those are chosen well. The matrices which drive the computation are from a set of matrices that the world has reached tentative agreement on, and that consistent application of mind has been put in place to make sure that those result in accurate, reliable reporting. And what you do as the assurer is to make sure that all of these processes, the model, the frameworks, the measures, the consistency, the quality, the addressing of various capitals, the communication with the various economic interests, all of that is done in a way that brings credibility and trust to that entire reporting. So that's the basic way in which you do your work. But now let me take you to your firm in 2040 and let us look at how the firm will look in 2040. By that time, working from anywhere would have become the norm, without a doubt. And therefore, you have, like I see on this call, people from different parts of the country. You could have people from different parts of the world working from anywhere. Doesn't matter whether it's Lucknow or Delhi or any place on earth that has an internet connection which is robust and which works. So that's going to be the ruling situation in 2040. The underlying essence of the professional firm will be collaboration. Nothing signifies, no word signifies what the firm will be like better than the word collaboration. It has become so critical that that becomes the watchword. And I think that watchword came more into vogue in 2020 as all of us experienced the absolutely frightening, unexpected, unsuspecting kind of outcomes that happened as the result of the pandemic. And what that resulted is the drive towards creation of repositories. It's a very significant change that has begun to happen. There will now be a repository of global standards. Every standard affecting any part of our work, whether it's auditing, tax, whatever you want to look at it. Every standard established, which is global, will be available in that repository for download instantaneously. Frameworks. We uh, we saw the difference between frameworks and standards in the context of sustainability. But in every context, wherever we need frameworks, they will all be part of the repository. Auto updating guidelines. They will be up in the cloud because it's impossible for anybody to remember everything that needs to be taken care of. The GRI guidelines go over multiple parameters, or the SASB guidelines go over multiple parameters. Each one of them has got a guidance associated with it. But that guidance needs to be updated. And there needs to be a way to keep this entire process updated automatically as soon as any change happens. Portals. So it's again very difficult. Let's say that you have a global organization like Apple or you have Amazon, and they are operating almost everywhere, every corner of the world. Now, what you need for such an organization to get a sense of being in charge, to have a portal or a resting place or a in the cloud space, which is theirs because they have defined it, they have parameterized it, and they are uploading their own information and data as it keeps transforming, as transactions happen, as compliances happen, as every action happens. That needs to be updated. Therefore, if there is, let us say, a board of directors meeting going on, or there is an audit review meeting going on, and you need to draw down what is critical information at that moment, then the portal will enable you to actually draw down relevant information, analyze the way you want at that time for that meeting. Platforms would have been created because you simply cannot work off physical ledgers and books and whatever. It will all be digital. There will be uh, multiple places in which records, data sets, and their interrelationships will be stored, but all of them will have to be brought together. And the platform will enable you to not only land on it, but take away from it. So you have to start thinking in terms of continually updating platforms. And content cannot be static. It will have to be streaming because not only will it undergo change, but it will be utilized by people and then remain undisturbed because by that time, and all of this content will be in the cloud. One prediction which is safe to make is that in 2040, the entire set of accounting and virtually all auditing will be blockchain. Because if you want data reliability at any time of usage, and you can imagine that there will be multiple people trying to access that data, which has to be updated from anywhere in the world. Everybody is working from anywhere, right? So that data will have to be accessed in its fully up-to-date form from, from the same source.
Hello.
Vivek, you'll have to put your, so, so that puts the challenge for all of us to make sure that the data becomes immutable by anybody else who's not supposed to influence what that data set should be. Once it is recorded, it has to become immutable. And the only known way in which to do that is to use the blockchain technology. Because what the blockchain does is it creates the connection and then it freezes it so that then the data remains immobilized. You have access to it. You can update it. It will be available, but it has to go back and be available at the same place where you found it. Because that's the way multiple users who are collaborating off a common portal, platform, repository can consistently and safely use that data. Now, all of this will be mapped by subjects because not all of us are doing work in every area. And the subjects that it will be mapped by would be all the ones that we are familiar with, at least in the accounting firm context, auditing, tax, ESG, very important. Cryptography. This is a development that we will, as an accounting profession, have to contend with. Not only is everything going to be scrambled and therefore the need for having it unscrambled, but because the blockchain will be so widely and ubiquitously used, cryptography will become the key technology that we as accountants will need to master. Cybersecurity, that is another subject which in a collaborative, portalized, working from anywhere environment becomes critically important. All instances of fraud, however small, will need to be mapped so that the root causes and the preventions can also be available in the same repository, which can be drawn down and put back in an updated form for use by the next set of people in a more refined way. All forensics that have been performed will need to be so updated. All valuations at all points in time. So if you want to track not only the trend line of valuations, but the comparative valuation in the same domain between various entities, which are subject matter of transactions, that will need to be drawdown able, usable in a sense that you can do the comparisons, perform the analytics, and then store it back. All M&A activity. It is today, if you ask me what is the most vibrant sector in the whole world, it is M&A. And that is going to continue to be so. Because just think about it. Out of the $400 trillion of assets that the world has created, almost 100 trillion of these assets will need either they are stranded and therefore they need to be reused in a different way. They need to be repositioned. They need to be morphed or changed or revalidated in different ways in order that they can continue through their useful life to deliver value. And therefore, just imagine $100 trillion worth of change to be continually reported on. Because either it will have a new owner, or it will have a new use, it will be transformed from one shape or form to another, it will be transformed from one use or the other to another use that it will now need to be put through. And all of this activity, therefore, will have to be organized by domain, cross domain, because ultimately, if you cannot do cross domain comparisons for productivity, you simply can't get to the best practice. And therefore, that's the way data will be stored in a siloless, interfaced manner so that you can draw from it and create the right analytics at all times, which is what will cause productivity benchmarks to emerge and also tracked so that you know how they have moved. You know, it's very interesting in a conversation between IMF's chief and and Yuval Harari. This whole debate happened on whether the productivity of the world has changed. And the interesting facet that was brought out is that just imagine that the entire information technology capability of the world 100 years ago is available in the cell phone that we cannot even permit to be away from us for even 5 minutes during a day. That is the unrecorded gain in productivity that has actually taken place. And therefore, we will need to see this kind of information in a repository which you can draw down upon. This whole cloud will be called the control and assurance cloud because that is the super domain from which we will draw as a profession everything that we need to draw. It will have to be obviously automated. It will be machine learning and artificial intelligence driven. And the governance of all of this, and I know that Huzaifa particularly likes to talk in terms of governance issues surrounding every aspect. And this governance will also have to be deployed on a global scale. So now imagine the complexity of governing this phenomenal repository, which has been created by the world over the last, now we are talking about 2040. So this repository has been created over the last 20 years with data which is in massive zettabytes of data, which has been processed, organized, kept together, can be manipulated, brought down, tracked, analyzed, and put back. So people who can access different slivers of this cloud will be driven by this global governance, which in turn will have to be automated and which will have to be the subject matter of machine learning and artificial intelligence, because the whole governance mechanism must remember whether only authorized use was made of the access to this cloud. Um, and this data will be now let's turn our attention. This is, I would like to call this the infrastructure that the whole world will have to create and draw from. But now let us talk about data. Where will the data be drawn from? And what data will need to be tracked? This data will have to be tracked in terms of the flows from digital payment systems. It is very clear that in the next 10 years from today, cash will be a rarity. Already we are seeing the acceleration of digital payments. And my own prediction is that within a 10 to 15 year period, 2040 for sure, the use of cash will be almost forgotten. There are already countries in the world where 95% of elimination of cash has already happened. Nordics are one of them, where people simply stare at you if you pull out a currency note, or even if you ask for a currency note, go into a bank and they say that this is a cashless bank. So cash is going to be a thing of the past, and the digital payment infrastructure is going to create the largest quantum of data. All counterparty transactions will need to get recorded. And therefore, there will be an automatic scoring and rating and evaluation of counterparties, which, because of the history available and the ample storage space, which is always getting utilized as the world gets more complex and as the number of counterparties increase, you will then need to have all of them, not only rated, but scored so that discrimination can happen. Today, imagine the task. There are 18.5 lakh companies in the country. Now, if you want to array them in descending order of credibility, you can imagine the task that it entails. But that's something that a company that I know of and I currently happen to be chairman of has set itself up to do. And what this has done is it has given us an amazing ability to enable people to discriminate effectively and very granularly between counterparties. 18.5 lakh companies have been mapped, and each of the risk factors in each one of them are being tracked as we speak and put into ML and AI driven algorithm, which enables us to figure out where the risk factors are in each one of them. So not only will all of this data with history and ratings and evaluations and scoring need to be stored, but all the outcomes from the interaction between counterparties, all the annual and periodic reports from every economic entity will need to be stored and available. And that is getting ready as we speak. Even today, the amount of data that you can get if you're performing a global valuation exercise is just incredible. And that will become sharper, more focused, better analyzed, and in the form that I'm now speaking about in the cloud. Audit and assurance will cease to be a periodic activity completely. It will have to be continuous. There is no way that you can have auditing which is discrete, say a quarterly audit or a half yearly audit or a monthly audit. All of that will become obsolete. But what will be required perhaps is that at reasonable intervals, like a quarter or a year, depending on the sensitivity of the report, will have to be the basis for comparison and for trend lining. And that will be the only purpose of periodic reports. Otherwise, auditing, assurance, tax filing, tax compliance, M&A activity, valuation, all of that will be all happening in real time. You cannot say that this is happening in a particular measured, constrained time duration. And the control systems will have to be so structured that the time lag between the cause of a problem and its discovery will have to be continuously narrowed down. And if that is happening, then obviously corrections will happen much faster. And therefore, the validity and utility of data which is historical is only for creating the trend lines and for creating the analytical and inciting capabilities and nothing more. So a formal report may need to be put in place on a periodic basis, but that's only on an upload basis and on the basis of retrieval for comparison and uh, future analytics. And therefore, as you can expect over the next 20 years, the number of people who will have to remain engaged in accounting and auditing will reduce dramatically. In fact, if you see any list of the jobs that are likely to get most redundant, you will find accounting and auditing right up there on the list. Just ahead of us are perhaps travel agents, and there are brokers who compete with us in terms of the potential for redundancy. But it is the the continuous nature of this activity and the way that it will get transformed will change the kind of people, the number of people, the tools they will use, the way that they will access this data, the way they'll provide that assurance will all undergo a complete change from the periodic intensity which we follow today to a continuous assurance and control mechanism, which is the holy grail for the accounting profession. The, the numbers can go down by massive magnitudes. And, if you were to draw a trend line of the number of people engaged in these activities, you will see a very steeply falling off graph. A mindset map of those people who will be in your firm and will be in many other firms at that time. And this set of mindsets was documented by McKinsey and Company in a report, let us say, which is being continually updated. But let me just read out to you the mindsets that have been discovered so far. And the mindsets are an exponential mindset. So don't think about processes in a linear manner. Think of them in exponentials. Think of the way that we are totally happy to work from anywhere, suddenly in 1 year. Think about the fact that any medical consultation can now happen remotely. Israel has moved rapidly. Almost 95% of all doctor consultations have become remote. And they've been effective because they were one of the countries that managed the COVID impact the best, only because they were able to think exponentially about all of these things that were earlier constrained by linear thinking. So that mindset is very, very important. The other mindset, the next mindset I'd like to leave for you to consider and ponder is to have a massively transformative purpose. Not just a purpose which is simple. It has to be massively transformative. It has to change the status quo almost completely. Disruption driven. That's the next mindset. Because today, the fact of the matter is that if you are not disrupting the business that you are in, somebody else will disrupt you. And therefore, disruption driven mindset is critical to have to prepare for the rapid and fundamental changes that are happening. And if you want to cope with this, then your thinking or your mindset will have to be driven by what are called moonshots, things which look completely impossible. 2 years ago, who would have imagined that Jeff Bezos would simply quit Amazon and spend most of his time and a lot of his money on exploring space and would give for $27 million another human being a shot at being his companion on his next space journey? But that's the moonshot that he has been investing in over the last several years. He puts away almost $2 billion every year into space. The experimental mindset. It's not enough to simply explore. It is very important to experiment and fail and learn and move to the next. A healthy physical and mental longevity kind of mindset. Very important as a new mindset in the new era. You need to have long, productive, healthy life, and you need to figure out exactly how that needs to be done. And all of this would be in the context of the 7 Ds of the world that is getting altered every minute. The 7 Ds are, uh, or if you like, you can call them the seven sisters, are digitize. Everything will be digitized. You simply cannot have anything which is manual, physical. Even that which is manual will be digitized and be represented in or representable in a digital form. Disrupted, following a stealthy path towards transformation. Dematerialized, mostly. Demonetized, delocalized. So anything can happen from anywhere in the world. And in fact, things will start happening from where you are at a proximate location. And lastly, democratized. So everybody can have access to and afford these gains. So the 7 mindsets supported by the 7 sisters will describe the way the world will have to change its attitude, the profession will have to change its attitude to be able to cope with the way the world would have emerged in 2040. 7 business models are evolving today, which are driving all of the change that we are seeing. And they are very, you would have seen them somewhere or the other. And as I mentioned them, you will be able to correlate and get your mind around them. But it's very important to see and mark that these business models are what have given rise to the fact that the Anthropocene world, which developed between 1950 and 20, let's say 19, where we simply used up our planet twice over. We extracted minerals, destroyed forests, cut down wood, changed the levels of the seas, changed the climate, got warming done. We did all of this as a human race in that compact period of 70 years from 1950 to 2010. And now we are moving towards a completely new era, a new phase of innovation, which I like to call the clean tech age. And I'll talk about the emerging clean tech age because that's what gives rise to all this, that gave rise to the need for us to have this interaction in the first place. This whole idea of having sustainability assured arises from the fact that the Anthropocene age is giving way to a clean tech age, which will get us back to below 2 degrees Celsius. Because beyond that, the human race won't be able to tolerate the rise in temperature. So, what are these 7 business models that have suddenly erupted? The first, and you will notice this, is the crowd economy. So, everything is based on crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, leveraged assets, which reclaimed from stranded assets, which could be reclaimed from repositioned assets or repurposed assets. Staff is on demand everywhere. Look at some of the most successful organizations in the world. Team Lee's in India. Why go far? It's purely staff on demand to bring into a collaborative cloud-based interaction the 5 to 7 billion humans on the World Wide Web. You know, there's nothing which is getting more investment today than just strengthening the access to the internet, whether it is in terms of just the infrastructure through satellites and through underground cables and through strung wires and through drones and through balloons, and all kinds of internet extension strategies are being pursued. And all of this on a truly worldwide web, catering to 5 to 7 billion human beings who are today connected. And this number has the potential to grow only by another couple of billion, because the peak population of the world is likely to be no more than 9 billion. So the big enterprises of this era, this crowd economy, are Airbnb, very obvious example, Uber, and all the other ride-sharing companies, WeWork, the office sharing space, Google, which gives you software which can be shared, Snowflake. I don't know whether you all have run into Snowflake, but very interesting piece of de-siloed, data-led, amazing software which sits on all other ERPs and just enables insightful analytics to be done. These are examples of enterprises that continue from that era, which is today, and they are likely to last for the next 20 years. And therefore, you would see more sharpened examples of such enterprises in 2040. The free data economy. 9 billion humans were baited with free access while they gave up their data that drives scale by exploiting micro demographics. Today, you can create niche products to suit the smallest sliver of demographics. And who did this? Who pioneered this? Google. Clear example of somebody who lured us into searching and found out everything about us, our habits, where we go, what we do, what we like, which places we go and visit more often, which countries we are more fond. Everything is known. Facebook, Twitter, they're all born and are thriving in that and this kind of era. And now there are multiple sub-segments which are emerging from each one of this, which are creating amazing new enterprises. And they continue to thrive, and they are likely to continue to thrive for the next 20 years. The next is the smartness economy model. So AI has become the electricity that scales devices, that scales services, and scales consumption. And the children of the AI age are obviously Amazon, Salesforce, Apple, Tesla. All of them are early adapters, which have just spawned multi-trillion-dollar market cap companies across the globe and across this model. The fourth kind of business model is a closed loop economy. So what has happened is biomimicry and clean tech have combined to create what are now being created as smart cities, which create an ability to go from cradle to cradle. So the minute you create something, then you go through its whole cycle and bring it back to where it was born. so that you don't waste anything. This is the whole recycling, not wasting, closed loop kind of business model. Brookfield is attempting it in the space of real estate. Now, there will have to be massive repurposing of real estate and space in a cradle to cradle manner. Lafarge Holcim talked about an era where there will not be any need to produce a single more ton of cement because all the cementation and building materials that you need will come from buildings that need to be brought down and recycled. Unilever and Nestle are attempting to do this in their quest for rising in the ESG scores that they have. The fifth is the decentralized autonomous organization. This is an astonishing new development, which I find very, very interesting. It is the convergence of blockchain and AI spawned companies with no employees, no bosses, and non-stop production. Completely autonomous uh, taxi companies, where the taxi is just moving continuously. Even where it has to go into repair, it knows because of the AI built into it that it now needs to get repaired. So it goes there, gets repaired, and starts moving on its own. Just imagine the new kind of governance that will be required for a decentralized autonomous organization. It's a completely new set of thinking. It's closed loop delivery companies, completely autonomous vehicles in a manner that will be further invented now as we go forward by companies like Swiggy, Delivery, and others um, who will be driven by completely reliable crypto economic incentives. So again, payments and the need to make sure that they go to the right person who's delivered the right service in a fully autonomous, automated activity in a business model. Just imagine the challenge of making sure that the incentive goes to the right person. Decentralized governance protocols and only influence on this business model will be that of the consumer. So all other influences will cease. No bosses, no employees, nothing else. Just the customer experience will drive whether this model will succeed or not. And then there is what is called the multiple world model. This is an astonishing new set of creative innovation that are being practiced today. So I heard a webinar just a week ago where non-fungible tokens were being defined. So what it described is the idea that you are sitting in Mumbai, but you can twin with your cousin in New York and take a ride in the best park that you have chosen, the best sort of path that you have selected in a virtual manner using VR, AR glasses and moving into the digital space of New York, and your New York friend twinning and moving into the digital space of Mumbai, and both of you creating that completely metaverse driven experience in a seamless, no jerk, continuous experience world. Same thing is happening for art, it's happening for sculptures, it's happening for almost everything is getting tokenized. Today, you can think in terms of transacting everything uh, through tokens. So all these crypto exchanges, they are gaining massive traction. Netflix, for example, is going to create this for us. The next version of Netflix will be virtual reality driven. And Second Life is another VR, AR property which is completely stunning the world. It'll be a world of Watoms and the spatial web where you will be able to move in and out of multiple universes that you create and you set out. And what will be representing you and creating the experience for you is your own avatar. Then there is the transformation economy. Very interesting, new. So we know that experience has become delivering customer experience has become the holy grail of consumption. But just go beyond that. An example of that is Starbucks, where you created a third space, which is not home, which is not office, but which is a third space where there is a caffeinated theme park, if you like, which enables you to have whatever experience you choose to have in a third space. But you can have your life transformed by experience in a business model where you go into and let's say work virtually in a uh, in a warehouse, old warehouse, where you get a complete experience of how to deal with zero facilities, no air conditioning, tough working environment, and you come out transformed. So it's not just the experience that people are looking for, but that transformation. And all of this in a world where we will have to continue to live because we would have changed the definition of what is it that it will take for us to survive. So you can see that uh, companies will begin to embed multiple versions and combinations of these seven business models using the seven mindsets and the seven levers of the digital world that we talked about. And you will then see today's, that is in 2040, a multiverse enabled, transformation driven, autonomous, reliable, safe, environmentally friendly uh, enterprise, which will lead to a new concept. Today everybody is talking about net zero. The important conversation in future will have to be gross zero. So you simply don't undertake any activity which will create any carbon footprint whatsoever. And that is going to get possible because of this convergence of all of these innovations that the world has begun to see in the digitized digital world. It'll be a networked, incremental, totally interesting world where a lot of our time will be spent in ways that we had never imagined possible. It will create a fresh consciousness, which will enable us to enjoy the collaboration, make sure that we actually fulfill the obligations of the ESG transformation that we talked about. Very quickly, what was the history that led us to today? It was the Industrial Revolution, which moved into the railway revolution, which moved into the car age, which moved into the aviation age, which then moved into the internet age, and then it moved into the Anthropocene age, which we talked about, all of those combined. And then today we are moving into the AR, VR, multiverse, clean tech age, which is going to bring the only service in auditing to be relevant will be not just the financial audit, but the audit and assurance of sustainability, which covers all six capitals, which covers E, S, and G. And these cascading waves of innovation have landed us to today. And it is up to us as a profession to rise up, to embrace this set of changes, learn from them, adopt them, and really make them the basis for transforming our future and for preserving the planet in a shape which is better for our children and our grandchildren. Thank you very much. You can open it up for questions now. I've gone a
Thank you,
whole
sir.
hour.
So I would request everybody to ask their questions if they wish to. I've got a lot of questions to ask, but I would request I see a lot of clients, partners of JHS as well as team members who have joined. So if you all have any questions, please raise your hand and ask them to Mr. Haribhakti. And after the question answer session, I would request our colleague Nikhil to give a vote of thanks to Mr. Haribhakti for the wonderful talk that he has given us today.
I think Kalpesh has a question. Kalpesh, if you would like to ask,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful outline on the sustainability. I have one question while we were talking on the firm in 2040. So we still find ourselves that we are still not upgraded fully with automation and with fully with technology. So is it the time that we should invest rather more in technology and automation or in human? It has now the time has started that we should be focusing more of our investment towards automation and technology. And having regards to the firm.
Absolutely, Kalpesh. I think to my mind, the distinguishing investment which will set aside the winning firms from the not so winning firms will be technology. There's no doubt whatsoever in my mind that the investment strategy of all our firms will have to pivot to massive investments in technology, particularly machine learning, AR, VR, uh, artificial intelligence, IoT, understanding how to pull data out, how to analyze it quickly, massive insighting from data, and even knowing where is the portal, where is the service, how do you access all of these amazing developments. Because what I've described is not from my imagination, it is from real life experiments and real life organizations that are already in existence. And if somebody has gone and done it, then that's going to become the pull for the rest of the people. And as that becomes more profitable and scaled up and more interesting, the gravitational pull of these technology led institutions will be the natural trigger for firms to invest in technology. So you're right, your question is absolutely appropriate. It will have to be investments in technology which will set you apart.
Thanks. I think Nikhil, you can now.
Thank you so much, Kalpesh. What is very clear from your outstanding presentation, sir, is that digital and technology is the way forward. It is something which we definitely cannot avoid. However, you also spoke about cybersecurity, and I want to ask you for your thoughts on how important morals, ethics, and values within this digital and technology transformation, which is going to, overtake all of us. And can there be a negative scenario in case these are misused? So, what are your foresights into this critical areas? Thank you.
Very interesting question, Nikhil. I think nothing is going to transform more than ethics and conduct which is behooving of a good human being. Because on the one hand, there's going to be nowhere to hide. It's going to be a fully trackable, as I talked about the business model in which Google has pursued, and by luring you to do the search, they have found data about you. In the same way, we will see data being given up in the physical world from machines through sensors, from human beings who will have embedded chips. But now let's take it to the misuse of this data.
So,
And I would point you to an amazing set of books by a author who has influenced my thinking amazingly, of an author by the name of Ramesh Nam. Very worthy. He's got three books. They're called Apex, what else? Crux, Apex, and there's one more which I right now can't remember. But if you Google search for Ramesh Nam, you will see that. In that book, he describes the dilemma you have raised on what happens in the fight between the deviant mind and the mind which wants to do good and wants to protect and govern better. And it's a classic battle because ultimately what will happen is, because you want to access this massive data cloud, you will have to have what is called the new science of brain computer interface, which will enable you as a collective. So let's say that the collective brain of everybody on this call is able to influence outcomes simply by using the same connector. Imagine the power of the potency and the power of that combined force acting on uh, whatever subject that you put your mind to. And then imagine the counter force of people who want to uh, do the do the opposite, that is wreak havoc or ask for ransom or stop systems from working, disable the functioning of critical infrastructure. All of this has happened, which is why cybersecurity, as you rightly pointed out, has become the kind of like the net over which this game of good versus evil is being played out in the world. My personal view, and this is a purely personal subjective view, is that the good will prevail because transparency and the democratization and the way in which productivity gains and clean tech deliveries will change mindsets and change thinking. I believe personally, that the good will prevail over the evil. But that's a purely personal evil. And there are people in the world who believe that the opposite is a likely outcome. But let's all hope and pray and work towards being the force, the collaborative force, which will make the good win. It's a fantastic question, and it's a continuous agony that all of us will go through.
So do we expect other developed countries to adopt this thing a little bit earlier? Or what challenges currently the other developed countries are facing, and we can prepare for those things on an early stage?
So that's a great question, Sahil. India is at number 113 in the sustainability race. Sweden is number one. Okay.
Yes,
And
sir.
so they've already started operating from a gross zero mentality. So they will not take up any activity. Just the collective will of the people is such that they will not take up any activity which will cause carbon footprint to emerge. Okay, they'll simply not do it. They'll change their consumption. The consumption will become responsible. Production will become responsible. The materials they use will be fully recyclable, cradle to cradle ideas, complete utilization of what is produced, complete picking up of the plastic, destroying it. All of that is reality today. If you go there and you experience the whole feeling, you will find people on bikes all the time. You'll find people in the outdoors. You'll find people open, free. Um, it's just a different level of living, a different level of the way that the whole society has decided that this is the way we'll go. There's no porter, there is no hierarchy. You can't find, manual labor. You have to do all your labor yourself. In fact, what they do is they try to eliminate it. They try to automate it. They try to make it easier. So the bikes that you ride there are so easy to ride. You don't have to put the same strain that you have to do here in the pedaling, for example. So they are deploying technology to change and enable life in a completely differentiated way. So the capital for raising impact funds is Sweden. Sweden is the largest source of impact capital in the world today. It's for this reason. So the Nord Fund, will invest in only ESG ready organizations. And they look for scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So in your entire value chain, if your value chain is not fully ESG ready, you're unlikely to get a sovereign fund investment from the Nord Fund. So it's the collective influence of all of this, the financiers, the people who want to work in a particular organization, the choices they can make. That's what's driving all of this. And that's why they are there, and we are working. We're working hard. The goal of India is to reach the top 50 in maybe the next 10, 15 years. So we are doing energy transition. That's one area. We have achieved 11% renewable energy with all the efforts that we've made and all the drama that you hear about in the press. We need to get very quickly to 30, 40%. And it's critically important that all our mindsets, and we should influence every client, every organization, every board, everywhere that we are, we should influence it in the direction of saving the planet. Very critical. It's only when you realize how much we are at the brink that you will start taking action. We have released 1900 gigatons of carbon since human life began. And a bulk of that release happened in the Anthropocene era, which is those 70 years that I talked about. It's just incredible what we've done. And therefore the challenge is also a very steep challenge to draw down 1100 gigatons of carbon, which we will have to either have it sequestered or stored or reduced, or just change the way that we think and live and organize ourselves. It's an existential issue.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sharad has a question from Calcutta. Sharad?
Yeah. Sir, first of all, I'd like to thank you from the core of my heart for this excellent eye-opener, I should say, which you just deliberated. With that, I'm just posing one basic question, which might sound primitive in light of the discussion which we had just now. But since I work in Calcutta, and our set of clients here basically belong to the medium and the small enterprises. So, as Kalpesh was saying, that going forward we have to invest heavily in the digitalization part, and so do our clients have to digitalize their books and their documents and everything. But what I find here is that they are still averse, especially the smaller sector, the medium and the smaller sector, they are still averse, and they still find comfort in going through that traditional system of bookkeeping and document keeping. So, sir, just wanted to have a piece of advice from you as to how to convince those clients that look, the way forward is digitalization and the 7 Ds, as you said.
Great question, Sharad. We've all gone through the same journey. I've also gone through the same
Correct.
journey. I had a huge struggle to install the first computer in my office because the traditional idea was कि कंप्यूटर की क्या जरूरत है, हम लोग तो ऑडिटर हैं, तो कंप्यूटर को क्या करेंगे. But that's where the struggle came. The best thing to do is storytelling. There is nothing more powerful than stories. और जब stories बताएंगे ना तो लोग मानने लगेंगे कि ये बदलना ठीक है. It's so important for you to become a very powerful communicator of why it is important to transform, why it is important to represent everything that you are doing. Talk to them stories of the next generation. Talk to them stories from what we are seeing around us in the way Netflix has destroyed television, has destroyed movie going, has destroyed so many things. So they will then relate to issues and ideas that are visible and they have seen and experienced around them. And you need to talk to them about the fact that it is impossible to avoid failure. Look at tax. Okay, in 5 years from today, there will be no need for any tax filing. You will simply get a tax determined bill and you have to pay it. That's all. From your digital financial footprint, the government of India will be able to figure out what is your tax obligation. And they'll just send you a notice that you got to pay this much. No assessment, no return filing, no interface, no faceless, nothing. This has already happened in a Latin American country. England was thinking of outsourcing its entire tax collection to Thomson Reuters. Okay, so these are trends and stories that you can tell, and they create the lesson. And one day, बत्ती जलेगी. हाँ, ये हमको भी करना है, हम भी कर सकते हैं. So it's a slow process. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a straightforward, 1, 2, 3. ऐसा नहीं है. कोशिश लगेगी, लगन लगेगी, बहुत बहुत कुछ लगेगा. But it will happen.
Right, sir.
It has to happen. Has to happen. There's no choice. The train has left the station.
True. Agree. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
There is a guest from Edelweiss, Kapil Talati. He has a question.
Sure.
So, sir, what I am part of risk management since long years. At the time when I was with ABN AMRO during 2007, 6, 5, 6, 7. At that time, I was that bank was the first following all the standards of lending, ESG and all. I've been seeing that people just talked. I personally don't see the developed nations has done anything beyond a just discussion on this front. Every 5 years new topic comes on, so just wanted your views, because plastic consumption on one hand you are not allowing any cap on that is continuously going up. On the fertilizer front they were advocating you need more output, you use fertilizer, and now the scientists has found that fertilizer we should not use it, and now people are moving to organic foods. So with these two example, that would be obviously you are much more having experience. So just wanted from your perspective, do you really think that this is they are advocating a lot of stuff, but they actually have an intention to implement?
100%. And I think all of us need to change our mindsets around it. See, you will find examples of single-use plastic still being made. Let's distinguish first between single-use plastic and plastic as a useful material. Plastic is now, for example, Reliance has taken on a commitment to make most of its plastic biodegradable. Okay. Now you might say plastic consumption तो बढ़ रहा है, but किसी ने आपको बताया कि ये plastic biodegradable है, reusable है, it won't go into a landfill and create noxious gases. That is the change that is happening. Why would a company like Reliance, which produces the maximum quantum of plastic, have Mukesh Ambani go out before the AGM and commit to a net zero by 20, I don't know what he said, 42 or something like that. He did it in parts. He says that this part of our operation will be net zero by 2030, in the next by 2035, etc. Why would he do that? Why would he commit to an energy transition to hydrogen and put the phenomenal quantum of money, 75,000 crores, which he has committed over the next 5 years, to make sure that Reliance will seed hydrogen as a fuel? You know, what is happening is that it happens in a stealth mode. You know, I talked about deception, one of the 7 Ds of digitalization. So it's happening in deceptive mode. Look at the way in which transition to renewables has happened. For the first time on earth, solar will be cheaper than coal. That tells me that King Coal is dead. So what will happen is, in all areas, it will be economic, social, financial, societal pressure, all combined together to make this change happen. And this change is real. Don't make any mistake about it. I'm about to start work with a person who is the largest plastic collector and processor in the world. Sits out of Amsterdam. He's an Indian. Mr. Patwari hai unka naam. His company is pretty famous. He has taken the vow that India में हर एक डिस्ट्रिक्ट में एक विलेज को वो साफ कर देंगे, और वो उनको 3 साल में करना है. क्यों कर रहे हैं? किसी ने उनको ये न्योता तो नहीं दिया है, but he has figured out how to make economic sense out of this absolute compulsion that we have come to. And the story you should be telling as a risk manager out of Edelweiss is the story of why people have voluntarily taken to managing this risk in a creative, financially sound, and societally incremental manner. And you will find many such stories all around you. You just need to scratch the surface. Thanks for your question. It's very, very good. I like to be provoked.
I just thought, because since 2017 I'm just seeing it's a tick mark exercise most of the MNC banks were doing.
पिछले 2 साल में बहुत फर्क पड़ गया. Last 2 years I have seen, you're right. I mean, if I were to go back and think through how I felt in those days versus how I feel today, the incremental Josh has happened in the last 2 years. COVID has done a lot of soul searching and new thinking, and the world has actually started moving. You see Jamie Dimon's letter, you see BlackRock's commitment to it. Just day before yesterday, I was listening to the chief executive of SASP in a webinar, and the genuineness with which these programs are today being implemented. I participated in a JP Morgan conference just about 2 months ago, and exactly the same conversation from all over the world, whether it's China, or it is Australia, or it is Taiwan, all over. Israel, my God, massively committed.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. If there are no other questions, we can move to the vote of thanks. Would request Nikhil.
Thank you, Josefa. Mr. Sailesh Haribhakti, thank you so much. It has always been a pleasure interacting with you. on multiple fora, which I've had the privilege of doing over the last, I would say, year and a half. And I thought I was here for a presentation on sustainability assurance. Instead, I found a presentation by, I don't know whether I should call you a soothsayer or a crystal ball gazer, but someone who actually, in an extremely fascinating manner, opened up the future. And जैसे आप शरद को कह रहे थे कि दिमाग की बत्ती खुल जाएगी उनकी, मेरे ख्याल से आज आपने हमारी भी दिमाग की बत्ती खोल दी है और दिमाग का ताला भी साथ साथ में थोड़ा सा खोल दिया है. So thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure to listen to you talk about all these different things. You spoke to us about the Value Reporting Foundation, the importance of frameworks, the different capitals of integrated reporting, whether human, environmental reporting, innovation, brand, etc. The 7 levers of the digital world, including work from anywhere, collaboration, platforms, digitization, sharing, blockchain, crypto, etc. And coming to the Dimag Ki Batti, the 7 Ds for mindset changes, from digitization, disruptions, dematerialization, demonetization, delocalization, democratization, and so on and so forth. The 7 business models of the crowd economy, connectivity, free data economy, smartness economy, closed loop economy, decentralized autonomous organizations, the multiple world model, the transformation economy. Actually, I think it's really been not just shining a light on where we need to look, on where we need to understand the absolute critical importance of both technology as well as change, which is overtaking us at such a rapid pace. I think the only message which I could get is we have to be ready to change all the time and do it in a technologically friendly manner in case we have to keep pace with the world. So thank you so much, sir. It's been absolutely brilliant listening to you. A wonderful experience as always. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. But I really thank you for the opportunity to address all of us at JHS Associates, as well as so many of our clients who've been kind enough to join us, because it's always, I would say, a privilege to listen to you. So thank you once again. Really appreciated this evening's session. Thank you.
Enjoyed being here. Thank you, Nikhil. Thank you, Zefa. All the
Thank you,
best to
sir.
all of you. All the
Thank you.
best.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.